So the Bulls, they get Lonzo, which I liked. I thought they got Lonzo on a good deal. I can't believe they didn't give up any real assets for him. They gave up Saturansky and Temple and not even a first pick. Well, it was like a second rounder. And then today they go all in to get DeMar DeRozan, a guy who we didn't know what his market was. It ends up being $85 million for 3 years. They have to send Thad Young, Elaminu, and a future first all the way back to the Spurs so they can overpay DeMar DeRozan. You like this more than I did. I did not like this move. I thought it was a huge overpay. I don't understand who they were bidding against. I don't understand why you would want him and Zach LaVine on the same team, but you like it more than I did. What did you like about it?
I like it. I like it more than you do in the sense, what other choice do you have to try and build a competitive playoff roster around Zach LaVine? Because if you do nothing, he's going to walk next year, or you're in a position where you just have to trade him. And I know you're not the biggest Zach LaVine fan, but there's no doubt about his abilities as a 27-point-per-game scorer, still in his mid-20s, still getting better every year, showed progress as a playmaker and defender last year. So with the Bulls, you're not going to get like a lot of stops on defense. Their defense is going to stink this year, but their offense is going to be really, really good, Bill. It's going to be a really good offense. And I feel like DeMar DeRozan's progress and development that happened in San Antonio kind of flew under the radar because it was the Spurs and they were past their 20-year run. Duncan's gone and everything. But DeRozan became a really good passer. Like, he's going to be the point guard of this team. He's going to be the point guard in the half court, one of the most league's most efficient isolation scorers, a very good pick and roll playmaker and scorer. I think it just balances out their offense and helps alleviate some of the shot creation off LaVine. And I think you're also going to see some 3-guard lineups. Billy Donovan did it in OKC with Chris Paul, Schroeder, and Gilgeous-Alexander. He's going to do it again here in Chicago with Ball, DeRozan, and LaVine. And they're going to score a heck of a lot of points and at least compete for a top 6 spot in the playoffs, even though they're not a contender.
I think they have the widest range of any East team. Yeah, I could see them in the right scenario with a couple injuries to other teams getting to the 3 seed. I could also see them barely getting into the play-in tournament and maybe even being an 11 seed. I think it's a 9 seed swing for them. But you mentioned LaVine. They had, they could have extended LaVine and given him a pretty big extension, which they had the leverage of being able to jump it by a year. And I'm a bigger fan than I was a year ago with him. I don't think he's a top 12 guy. I don't think he's a top 15 guy. I do think he could be one of the guys on a really good team. But I just wonder, so for the people listening, right now their starting 5 would be Lonzo, DeRozan, LaVine, Patrick Williams, who I think we both like, and Vucevic. And Patrick Williams is in the classic, I'm only shooting 6 times a game, I'm guarding the other team's best guy role. Lonzo, really fun to play with, doesn't need the ball all the time. As you said, they can use DeRozan in the half court. Coming off the bench, it's basically Kobe White and Alex Caruso right now. We don't know what's going to happen with Markkanen. So they have guard depth. They don't really have any size. They don't really have like that rebounding / rim protector guy. And it still seems like there's some work left. And I guess it would be the Markkanen would be the gateway to improving that. But I also don't know who the teams are because everybody's running out of cap space. But I really like the Lonzo move. I liked Thad Young on this team last year. And I do wonder, are they just better off keeping their assets, keeping that pick, kind of seeing what they have with Thad Young and making the move down the road versus going all in right away?
I mean, I understand it. Like, the slow play could have made sense. I think if you had LaVine signed long-term, maybe you would have done that. But this Bulls team has stunk for 4 or 5 years now. And I still look at their team and they're still young. Like, LaVine is young. They add Lonzo Ball, who's still young. Patrick Williams is going to only be 20 years old this season. It's not like they're in a position where they don't have young guys around their best player. They have a lot of good young players. In fact, they just also have some good veterans. And I think, with the Bulls, they're in an interesting spot because, like you said, I agree with you. Their range is wide, like up to a 3 seed. And if maybe their defense is so bad and if their offense is underwhelming, like it was, by the way, with Vooch and LaVine, their offense was not great. It wasn't firing off all cylinders like people expected when they first acquired him. If it underwhelms, they could be a play-in team or just on the play-in bubble. But I still look at the Bulls and I view this as kind of a bet on Patrick Williams because they're going to be in a position where they're going to be in the playoff hunt in the East. And if Patrick Williams continues ascending every single year of his career and becomes a 6'7" versatile shot creator who could defend multiple positions, suddenly you insert that into the Bulls and it changes the way you're viewing them in 2 or 3 years. So like I'm looking at what they're doing today as maybe a preview of how they want to build a couple of years from now.
I love that guy.
He's really good.
I liked how many minutes he played last year for what his age was and the defensive assignments he had. I'm all in on that guy. The big thing for me with them, what is LaVine going to get out of this Olympic experience? And is he going to have the bump that we've seen some guys have when these guys that are kind of a level below where they end up a year later after they've been on the Olympics, they always seem to have like the career year just from being around the other guys, picking up some work ethic stuff, the confidence of just kind of belonging. I don't know how much Team USA you watched. As you know, I'm an international basketball junkie. LaVine's been really important to this team. I think the shocking things for me about Team USA is LaVine being used kind of sometimes as a defensive stopper.
Oh, yeah.
And a two-way guy, that's one shocker. And two is kind of how ill-equipped Dame is for some of these international basketball matchups. They couldn't keep him on the floor yesterday against Spain. And when they really had to make their run a couple times in the first half and the second half, Dame wasn't on the floor. And it was Holiday was the key guy for them. And they were using LaVine and Booker, or LaVine or Booker, with Tatum and Durant, like 3 of those 4, and then a big. And Dame was kind of the odd man out, which I thought was fascinating. I think Australia is a better matchup for him. But did you notice that? Or have you been watching this? Because
I mean, Dame's like the only guy who isn't consistently locking in, getting a lot of stops on the defensive end. Like you said, even LaVine is playing some of the best defense of his entire life.
Like they're relying on him for defense, which I couldn't believe. Dame, they kind of don't know what to do with because he's not an international point guard. He's not a guy who makes everyone else better. He's kind of a clear out, create space for me, but that's not international basketball. And then defensively, everyone's picking on him.
But doesn't this speak to, the potential of a guy like Zach LaVine continuing to get better?
I mean, agree.
We've seen him reach 27 points per game on offense. We've seen him put in more effort on defense. Like, you're not going to have him be a stopper every night throughout the entire season. But what if he can become a guy who's above average, sometimes really good on defense? The way the Bulls roster looks, I think will change dramatically with DeMar DeRozan and Lonzo Ball in that backcourt. I think they're going to be exciting offensively. They're going to score a lot. And if, maybe add a Justice Winslow, some type of versatile wing, from the free agent market, round out this roster. Yeah, there's not a lot out there, Bill.
Winslow. Jesus.
I'm just pulling out another young-ish name.
I guess I think we agree on the same thought process. My question is, was DeRozan the right guy? Are they catching him at the right time of his career? Is it a little too late for him? I think if you're a Chicago fan,
he's getting better still, Bill. For real, he's still getting better as a playmaker.
Well, and as we talked about with Russillo last week, long twos are back.
Yeah, they are.
2-pointers,
and he's efficient doing it too. He's one of the few you can be very happy with shooting over half of his shots from mid range.
The funniest thing to me is the Bulls fans are just in disbelief that their team actually spent money.
All of them. It's a big difference from Garpax.
Yeah, it's like you're dating a girl or you're married to somebody and they're always going to whatever the crap grocery store is near you. And then one day they come home with Whole Foods. You're like, whoa, Whole Foods. You're feeling it today.
Trader Joe's. Wow.
Oh my God, Trader Joe's.
Alkaline water. How much is that gallon?
Fancy cold brew coffee bottles. I can't believe it. This is great. So I was excited about that. Just before we go on the Bulls, I really like the Lonzo deal for them, especially when you saw some of the money and just the ranges of like that $15 to $23 million range that guys were kind of bouncing around in. I thought they got a steal. The fact that they didn't have to give up real assets and then that they got him basically in 20 million years, 23 years old. We talked about him last week with Russillo. Like, he's a legitimately above average 3-point shooter now. He was taking 8 a game last year. He's 38%. I think he's really fun to play with. I think he's a better defensive player than I think people realize. And I just thought to get him for less than $25 million a year was a steal, in my opinion.
I'm with you on Lonzo. You're getting a defensive playmaker, so good off the ball, guy who moves it offensively. The ball never sticks in his hands, which
just
is
fun
important.
to play with.
Yeah, I mean, like, who wouldn't want to play with a guy like that, whether you're playing pickup or in the NBA? Like, it's perfect next to two guys who really going to handle the ball, and DeRozan and Levine, and then Caruso too. I mean, adding him, really good wing defender, better on ball than Lonzo, equally potent off the ball. I mean, those guys, like, they're going to have the ability to play some really fun small lineups in Chicago. I'm excited to see what they do.
It's a great point about the Donovan liking the 3-guard lineups and having success with that. Because you think like Lonzo, DeRozan, Levine, Caruso, and Kobe White, whatever they get out of him, whether he's just an energy scorer off the bench or whether he can even stay on the court. They will have a lot of flexibility in the East. The ability to go with smaller lineups, I think, is really going to help them. We saw it work with Atlanta last year to some degree. I'm rooting for Lonzo. I talked about it with Jackie on Sunday. I just feel like if you look at the first 4 years of his career, it's about as messed up as you get without a major injury. Just a new situation every year. He was never on the right team. He never had the right coach. Just was never in the right situation. So maybe this is it. All right.
And
question
he got
number
better,
2.
Bill. He got better despite
He did.
it all.
He got better
Yeah.
and he worked on his weaknesses. Question number 2. What in the living hell is this Lakers team? What is this? Do I like it? Do I not like it? It's like watching a 2K team or something. Right now, here's their starting lineup. I'm guessing LeBron, Carmelo, Anthony Davis, Westbrook, and Malik Monk is a potential starting lineup for them. Off the bench, Kendrick Nunn, Horton Tucker, Ellington, Ariza, Bazemore, and Dwight Howard. What the fuck is going on, KOC? What is this?
Yeah, it's definitely a 2K team. It's funny seeing all these mid 30-year-old players all on the same team. Maybe LeBron is the GM there. Who knows with some of the decisions they've made. But I love what the Lakers are doing. You like, we'll talk about our favorite signings. Horton Tucker is one of my favorite signings because he's like the one young piece on their roster now with Kendrick Nunn as well and Malik Monk. They're signing young guys and retaining
3
him.
for 32 for Horton Tucker, which was lower than I think we expected.
That's a pretty good deal. I mean, I'd be happy about that as a Lakers fan. So I think, this team, it's all about still like what we talked about in the part 1 of last week's pod. Russell Westbrook, how he adapts, how he evolves with this roster. But with everything they've done since then to surround Westbrook and LeBron and AD with some good shooters, Ariza, Carmelo, Ellington, as well as some young guys, the Lakers roster just suddenly feels perfectly balanced when I look at it. Like, at the age, I'm not worried about. This is a well-balanced team that can play a whole bunch of different ways, big or small, 80 at the 5. I mean, whatever way you want to throw it out there, they can do it.
All right. Well, I hate the Lakers, so allow me to pick this apart just for sport. I'm not even necessarily saying I believe this. Let's go in order. Kent Bazemore, as an 11th man, I guess he's fine. We saw what happened with the Warriors when they actually had to rely on him in a couple playing games.
He might be an 11th man, to be fair.
He's an 11th man.
Yeah.
Ariza was done 2 years ago, maybe 3. Apologies to Ariza. I can't remember if it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago when you stopped being a relevant player. But you're not a relevant player anymore. Sorry. Wayne Ellington has been on 8 teams? How many teams has he bounced around on where every time it's like, oh, Wayne Ellington, 3-point shooting. And it's like, name your greatest Wayne Ellington playoff moments, because I can't think of one of them. So cross him off. I've crossed off 3 in a row. Horton Tucker lit up a couple preseason games. Congrats to him. We've never actually seen him in a meaningful moment ever. Kendrick Nunn, during the Miami finals run, was basically relegated to obscurity on the side. Now, he had an injury and stuff like that. Last year, I think he had COVID for a little bit. Like, he never was able to find his stride, but Miami couldn't wait to get off him. They let him go, and he basically signed a 1-year bet on myself contract. I go one at a time on those. I'm not doing backflips. Now, Monk, that one hurts.
That hurts.
That was
of all of them, Monk hurts the most.
He was coming on last year on Charlotte like a freight train as an impact scorer off the bench, like a really, really elite off the bench, put like Jordan Clarkson kind of potential. And then he got hurt. And it was a weird team in general. They had a lot of guards. LaMelo broke his wrist, and that team like never found his stride again. But there were a couple of weeks there when it looked like the guy from college. I've never given up on Malik Monk, and now I am in a really weird situation of, do I root for him to do well in the Lakers so I can do the I told you so thing? Remember, I own property on the beachfront of Monk Island. So do I root for him to do well in the Lakers, or is this now an I can't lose situation for me where if he sucks, then at least he sucks on the Lakers? Then I can be like, well, I was wrong, but at least he screwed up the Lakers. I feel like I can't lose. I love this spot for him, though, and it really makes me mad. I thought that was the best of their signings.
Are you surprised he didn't have a bigger market? I mean, I know not a lot of money out there, but I'm a little bit surprised.
Well, I can think of one team that could have used him, a team I root for.
Yeah, the Boston Celtics.
Yeah. What team could have used like instant scoring off the bench?
Yep.
I thought
Sixers too could have used them. Knicks,
Knicks. I thought for sure.
Yeah.
When you think of Wes's Kentucky connections and the Leon West thing, I just assumed he was going to the Knicks for like 3 for 30. He had a tweet. He tweeted, "Bet on yourself."
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder if he passed up bigger money just to try to.
I think there's a possibility there because
Maybe.
think of all the reasons we talked about why Buddy Hield would have been awesome on the Lakers.
Yeah.
If Malik Monk is able to shoot threes as well as he did last season and not as poorly as he did the first couple of years in the NBA, I mean, everything applies to Monk with how they could utilize him off the ball. Like just to a little bit of a lesser extent, he's a smaller player, not as big as Buddy Hield, but they can run him off screens, handoffs, have him run an occasional pick and roll. This really is a bet on yourself situation for Malik Monk to get all of those reps that everybody for like 24 hours thought was going to be going to Buddy Hield.
He has fan favorite potential for them. So a couple things with their weird roster. By the way, Carmelo is another one that I can't imagine he has much left at this point. We know he can't defend anybody.
Can't defend, but
there's some real defensive issues with this team. Caruso was their best perimeter defender of any guard they had. LeBron occasionally plays defense. Regular season,
he's very good on defense.
Well, regular season, he doesn't like he does in the playoffs. I think he picks his spots. Regular season, he can turn up.
And AD is a dominant force.
Westbrook, pretty bad.
Yeah, takes too many risks, loses focus. Very annoying on defense.
Malik Monk, that's not why you have him for D. Kendrick Nunn, he can actually be a little frisky, but you go on down the line, I do think defense. Somebody, the right kind of guard, feels like could have like a 55-point game against this team. But the big thing that jumps out to me is that AD is actually going to play the 5 for this team this year, right? That seems like part of the bet.
I mean, that was reported about like a month ago that AD is going to play more 5, LeBron more 4. And if that's the case, like the roster makes way more sense. If you're seeing a lot of Gasol and AD, a lot of Dwight with AD, I'm not quite as high on it, but AD at the 5, like this is going to have to be a defensive player of the year season for him. Right? Like because of some of the weak spots on the defensive end, he's going to have to clean up more mistakes. He's going to have to get more stops around the paint. And for him, he's going to have to perform for them to maintain being a top 5 defense. But I mean, I think overall, though, they still have the personnel. LeBron's a good defender. AD's a dominant defender. They have other guys that could step up maybe with more defined roles. And Horton Tucker also. I would be interested to see how he performs on defense with regular minutes, regular opportunity. I'm willing to bet that that's one of the reasons why they were willing to let Caruso go, because it opens opportunity for Horton Tucker to potentially blossom coming off their bench.
Well, I know I've made fun of them and poked holes for the last 5 minutes, but I have them ranked first right now in the West, and we'll go through some of the hierarchy. But at least for the regular season, as Russillo covered when we did part 1 last week, Westbrook will really help with that. With his, he just really gives a shit every game, and there's going to be games that he just saves for them. They're going to have enough offense, and the holes on this team probably won't matter as much until the playoffs. But the Davis thing, it's a big risk to say, all right, you're going to now play the position you've been resisting to play for the last 5 years, basically.
He can do it,
last 6. I know he can. He just has never wanted to.
Yeah, maybe he finally had an awakening that like he can play the 5 almost any game except for maybe when you're facing Denver in the West. Like if you're facing Jokic, hey, Marc Gasol, you're starting tonight. Dwight Howard, you're out there tonight. But almost any other game, he should be able to start at 5. Like please, just start at the 5.
Well, both Gasols were having a corpse off against Team USA last night, so I'm not sure how much they have left in the tank. And Dwight, God only knows how much he is left in the tank. And then, no small feat. LeBron is going to cross 60,000 minutes next season. At some point, we have to wonder what is his appetite to carry a team. But look, they didn't hurt themselves. I don't like the Westbrook signing. I'm never going to like it. I like it less than I did when we did our pod on Thursday. I just rather would have had Buddy Hield and KCP in the 22nd pick. I'd rather have that right now with this roster I'm looking at. But they're still the Lakers. They'll be fine.